Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food, Freedom, and Fertility. You have Sophia Pavia and Caitlin Johnson here, your two registered dietitian besties, speaking all the truth into you about fertility, nutrition, and hope. And today we are privileged to have one of our season sponsors joining us. We have Alysa Seeland here. She's the founder of Fond. If you haven't just been spammed by us about Fond yet, just wait. If you haven't seen it in the feed yet, this is a brand we jumped at the opportunity to work with because when you talk about the character of a brand and making business decisions that you're aligned with, this is probably one of the top 3 brands that I'm proud to even purchase because of those
We're
things.
so happy when you wanted to partner with us, and we're still riding that high because
Yeah, we are.
is great.
Amazing.
So Alysa, she's the founder of Fond. This was a farmers market project turned, you can find them in major grocery store distributors throughout the country. A mom of 6 boys and has some interesting kind of fertility related content that we're going to dive into a little bit today. And last year they launched their Foundations Fat line, which I can strongly attest to using and loving. They do regenerative tallow and lard, and she continues to live this through even just her personal growth and sourcing of her food. She has a regenerative garden in her backyard, even in the state of Texas, where that's probably a lot harder than other areas of the country. So we're so happy to have you here today, Alysa. Thank you for your time. Thank you for partnering with us. And thank you for just making something that I'm so proud to eat and put in my little kiddos' bellies. It's amazing.
Well, my goodness, what an introduction. Thank you, ladies. I am honored to be here. I was so excited to have the opportunity. You mentioned the word hope, and that is one of the reasons I was so excited to come on to this podcast and just share my story. As you alluded to, I've had a lot of doctors tell me a lot of things that did not turn out to be true. And so, one of the things that I'm most excited about is just being able to share that the road is winding, that healing is possible, that recovery is absolutely is not only possible, but you can really tap into how to unlock recovery for your body through these nutrient dense foundational foods. So I am so delighted to be here and to get to share with your listeners today.
It's the best. And when I think about this podcast and what it is for a lot of people, we just recently started doing these other episodes that aren't just educational, but are connecting and kind of creating the idea of community around people, where we tell fertility stories. And oftentimes we've even done ones where it's like, we're not at the end of the story yet, but we're on our way. And I lost 100 pounds and now I can qualify for this type of treatment I need. And so it's really nice to also, I related to this because I listened to a lot of birth stories when I was pregnant. But hearing stories that follow the winding road and show that healing isn't always linear, but is possible, and painting that hope for people is really a gift too. So I'm excited to dive into that a little bit. Can you kind of zoom out and maybe 10,000-foot view of major points in your life leading up to, I want to get married, I want to have children, that pointed towards health and nutrition that maybe you didn't realize were a huge part of the story until you're kind of on this side looking backwards?
Yeah, what a great question. I like to say my culinary adventures started at like 5 years old in the backyard, making like probably biohazards with like leaves and all these different things, making like these little soups and pretending, I was in Little House on the Prairie. And I just always loved that. I've always loved nature. I've always been like almost infatuated with just the growing process. I remember when I first grew like snow peas inside, and I was like looking at the root system, and my husband was like, wow, you really love this. And I was like, oh, do you not look at root systems of snow peas inside and like love it? So I think I've always had a deep connection to the land and just a love for creation. I could walk down my neighborhood and probably point to several, not all, but like several varieties of plants, right? Just on the side. So I'm drawn to that. I love it. Have always really loved food, but was a really picky eater. I like to say, if you've seen Ratatouille, like the critic that's like, hey, if it's not good, I don't swallow. That's
I
like,
don't
you
like
know,
food. I love food. And if I
yes.
don't love it, I don't swallow.
Yes, that's
It's one
100%.
of my
So,
daughter's favorite movies. She wants to be the
yes.
little chef. So yeah, she
Oh, totally, yes. Like and that the way that movie showed like food and what it does and how you like think of flavor combinations is not exactly how I do it, but it's like, yes, like I totally got
Mhm.
that. And so I've always loved, when you start to see things where I started asking, well, like, how is this food made? And we largely ate like a standard American family, like a lot of processed foods. And so it would shock me, like my dad would bring home, Entenmann's donuts or something. And I would be like, how are these made? Like, do you make these with like flour? Like I just like at a very basic level, I was really interested in how food was made, how it was sourced, and loved flavor. I remember the first time I made scrambled eggs with garlic salt for my parents, and they were like, what is this? And it was like the most simple thing. So I've always loved that, gravitated toward that. And I think also I didn't realize it at the time, but I was very, very undernourished. I was a 3-sport athlete, did speech and debate team, was kind of always under some pretty high stress. And one of the ways that I dealt with that was to not eat. And I'm not
Mm.
going so far in high school as saying I had an eating disorder, but it was a coping mechanism with like, okay, I'm stressed out, or I don't like these GI symptoms that I get when I'm stressed out. And so I'm just going to like not eat. I'm going to skip it. And so by the time I got pregnant, before when we were getting married and we were going through some of the fertility things, like how are we going to navigate birth control and what are we going to do? And are we going to do natural family planning or what? My gynecologist said, hey, you are so malnourished, you're not going to be able to get pregnant.
Wow.
Now,
Mhm.
did like a gynecologist have the credentials to say that? Probably not. But I do look back at pictures and I'm like, wow, she's pretty skinny, and
Mhm.
skinny is not always bad. But so it took about 3 years for us to get pregnant. And when I did get pregnant, my midwife at the time was like, you are concave. There's no way you're going to bring this pregnancy to term. And I say those things to say, how awful for someone to say that. And in both instances. And I think there's a way, of course, you can talk about bedside manner, but I think there's a way to say, hey, if fertility is really important to you, if having a baby is a goal, definitely prioritize nutrition in these next couple of years, right? Like the gynecologist could have said something like that. The midwife could have said something like, you know, I'm so excited for you to have this baby. Here's ways to support your body to make sure that you don't lose this pregnancy. And I just I say that to say, a lot of times people will speak things over us, and we need to make sure that we are also speaking over ourselves. you asked about something that in my childhood happened. When I was 15, I was on a missions trip and I told my leader, I'm going to have 6 boys when I grow up. I kid you not. And I actually forgot about it until I had my 4th boy. And she messaged me on Facebook and she said, "Did you remember saying this to me?" And I was like, "Oh my." And then, of course, like where I was and where we were. And, people have 2 responses to that, right? Like, wow, God really has a sense of humor. And the other response is like, wow, that's some serious manifestation, right? Like, there is something going on there where I'm like saying this is going to happen. And so, and I'm from the worldview where it can be both, right? And so I think it's
He
really
works in you to
beautiful that
will and
that
to do of
happened.
his good pleasure. So, I mean, chicken or the egg, did he plant
Yeah,
this in your heart and tell you this is where I'm taking you? Or did you come to him and
right.
say, this is where I want to go? And he said, giddy
And
up,
he gave
you
it to
know?
me. Yeah, like
Yeah.
I love it. And so and there were some hiccups in the journey. Like after I had our 4th, which I had Jude in 11 contractions on the floor of our kitchen.
Oh, wow.
Um, my
Go,
husband
mama.
delivered him,
Who is this
and
person?
thankfully,
This is
which one? My
wild.
husband or Jude?
No,
No,
you. No,
Oh,
you.
Alysa. Who's Alysa?
I had my baby in 53
and
hours of contractions. Hey, Food Freedom and Fertility family. It's Sophia introducing Fertility Cloud. High treatment costs can be daunting, but here's some good news. 80% of Fertility Cloud patients have gotten pregnant for under $2,000 after just 5 months of treatment. Starting your family doesn't need to come with a huge price tag. Fertility Cloud virtual consultations mean you can talk to them from the comfort of your couch. They create personalized plans for men and women, whether it's ovarian stimulation with Clomid or Letrozole, Ovidrel trigger shots, guidance on male fertility, or even weight management support with medication. As a special for Food Freedom and Fertility listeners, get $50 off your initial medical doctor consultation. With meds delivered in just a day or two, unlimited support for your questions, and free follow ups when needed, they're here to make your path to parenthood smoother and more affordable.
well, I
Both are
I
hard. Both are
Listen,
hard.
it's all
yes.
about me. Bring it on back to what's really
No, I
important here,
mean,
guys. No, I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed I even said anything. Please continue your story.
but different kinds of hard, which we can talk about as well, and different things
Mhm.
going on nutritionally at that time. But after Jude, and it was really beautiful. He smiled. We delivered. Isaac caught him and he smiled. The first thing he did was smile, and we needed that because our house looked like a freaking horror film. There's blood everywhere. Thank God our other kids were sleeping. The midwife's on the way. She gets there a half hour later. And everything was fine, but it was really hard. And we were also at a hard stage of life, and I had a really traumatic miscarriage after Jude, and it ended up triggering Lyme disease. And so I'd
Mm.
been bitten by several ticks in my youth, but never got sick. And Lyme disease is opportunistic. It's kind of the
Mhm.
worst. It lies dormant until a time of significant stress, and then
Mhm.
it
Mm.
activates. And so this really traumatic miscarriage with a lot of blood loss triggered Lyme disease, which then I would really struggle with for a year. I had blackout panic attacks because I had a neurological form of Lyme. And after like a year of intensive therapy, I had a year of remission, and then I got pregnant with Asher. But we did not, that was another time when my doctor, my MD was like, well, you'll never have kids again.
What?
So, like, forgive me if I'm highly skeptical at this point
Mm.
of like any authority or credibility in what someone else says about my body.
Mhm.
And so, we had our 5th, and just was a very gentle, beautiful experience. Was, you know, born in, I mean, like I basically labored by myself, and, it was not hard. And then the 6th, y'all. I mean, I wanted to deliver my own baby. I wanted this to be my victory lap. I wanted to have him at home. Oh my goodness. I could not have needed more help. It took 3 people to help position me to be able to push. I mean, it was sheer. So I think what's also interesting is like this story of, the desire to like arrive.
And
Okay, I've done this
surrender.
5. Yeah. I've done this 5 times. I've got this. And it's like, every baby, every body is different. And I learned as much, if not more, in my 6th than in my 1st,
Mm.
right? And so
Wow.
it's always such an interesting experience. But yeah, so that's a long answer to your beautiful
You are
question.
just speaking such life right now. Such life,
I
because
got
there
goosebumps.
are people listening, me one of them, like who their doctors have told them, "You're donezo, girlfriend." And this is wrong, this is wrong, we don't know what's wrong, your only hope is to give us dozens of thousands of dollars and compromise all of your religious beliefs and ethics in order to get where you want to go. I myself, because again, it's all about me, listener, we're bringing it back. I have a doctor's appointment after this, right after this, my 2-week follow up from my ectopic pregnancy surgery, where this doctor told me, you have to have another surgery and we have to cut this big old hole in your uterus and take this fibroid out. And then you have to have C-section. You have to wait a year and then you have to get a C-section to have another baby. And this is just ministering such life to me because it's both
Mm,
sides of it. Maybe she could be dead wrong. And you know what? Probably is. And there's no reason why I can't try to get pregnant in the wild and all these things. But at the same time, like your 6th birth, let's not pretend that I get to control everything. And
mm, mm,
maybe this does end up being more medical than I would prefer. But that doesn't mean, it just feels like such a death sentence. Like, as you know, who's birthed babies at home, it feels like you're being told you're going to have to go be a science experiment. Like, you're going to be a Frankenstein if you to have to go to the hospital with all these drugs and surgery and your baby's pulled out of a hole in your belly and blah de blah de blah. It just seems like such a awful, torturous situation. But then at the same time, I'm like, dude, I know like 40 people who've had C-sections and they're like, NBD, girl. Like, it's just another way to have a baby. Not that it can't be traumatic, but
yeah.
like, it doesn't mean it has to
Yeah.
be, and that this is going to be like the worst experience of your life. Plenty of people do this and they're
Yeah.
like, it was honestly fine. And here's my baby who's 8 years old now, and I spend approximately 0% of every day worried about the fact that I had a C-section.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that because I think there's a really big difference too. This is being done to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm allowing this. I agree that this is what's best for my body. And even if it's not what, like, there was a moment with Samuel because I did not have gestational diabetes, but he was 10 pounds, 4 ounces.
You go, girl.
Respect. I was
And
also a 10+ pound baby, Samuel. My golf clap to your size. I
oh,
bow to you.
yes. And it was really hard to get him out and he kept going back up. And
Oh
so
my gosh.
I had this moment where I was like, okay, if I have to have a C-section, if we have to transfer to the hospital, I'm okay with that because I know that I've done everything that I can do and that I honored, we prayed about it, we discerned, we made the decision we felt was best. And if it doesn't end in the place that I have for it, it's going to be okay. And um I think it's you talked about surrender, but
Mhm.
I think that's so important. And I think it's also when we get into this position of I don't want to do that and you're doing that to me, that's violence and that's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to try to not, sometimes that does happen and that's really sad and hard. And there are answers for that too. There's ways to process that and to heal from that beautifully and completely. But we want to try to not get there. And part of that is acceptance and empowering us to say, okay, like I believe that this will be for my good, even though it's not the one that I wanted. And by allowing your body to accept that, I think it really changes the way in which like your body will respond to surgery, where your body will respond to healing. Again, it's that violence versus acceptance and getting you already in that mindset of, okay, we're going to heal from this and we're going to recover.
Yeah. Alysa, there's something about all of this that is very interesting, and I can relate to it a little bit. Like there was a doctor's appointment that in the movie of my life I can see as like a climactic piece of the story where it was
The
also
hero
told to
origin
me,
story.
yeah, it's like you went to a doctor that told you were malnourished and you wouldn't get pregnant. You had
Or even
another
worse, the midwife said you are pregnant, you're
I
going to lose
know.
this baby. That's so,
I
oh,
know.
what a way to just speak death over someone. Ugh.
but
Yeah.
Alysa, you now nourish millions, thousands upon thousands. Like
Me?
you've created
Caitlin,
something.
family.
I just think that is, I just have to kind of stop and say it out loud because that is really powerful. And I hate that those words were said to you, but what a way to make it good. And like, not just be like, oh, in your face. That's not what I mean. To respond and be like, look how nourished I am. Look how nourished I was with this pregnancy that he was 10 pounds, 4 ounces. Like that is quite compelling because most people would just ruminate and allow those things to be everything for them and cause them great pain and anxiety and become the victim of it instead of saying like, what I speak over me is just as important, if not more, than what you just
It
said.
makes me think of
And
that, like when people say, like, you think I can't do this? Hold my beer. Except we're going to say, hold my broth.
my fond.
Hold my font.
Ooh,
That
ooh, we should
sounds
make a gift.
really kind of sexual. Hold my broth.
I love this story so much. So, zoom in a little bit further, and we have these like peaks of first baby after 3 years of trying, fourth baby, really beautiful smile, hard moments that followed. Like, where do we zoom into the beginning of this seventh baby that you've made, this business?
So, another moment of what I will say is courage and resiliency. And it's so beautiful to hear you hear my story and say that, one of the things that was spoken over Fond is that they're little jars of healing pushing back against the fall. And I think that, the fall being the origin point of sin, death, sorrow,
Mhm.
sadness, sickness, in the Christian worldview. However, for me, I think it was really a tangible like grace in my life. And so I did struggle with gut health issues. I don't even think the gynecologist and the midwife were necessarily wrong in that I was malnourished. They just weren't providing solutions or speaking hope and or accounting
Mm-hmm.
for how resilient the body is. But after I had my first baby, I knew something was wrong. And I don't mean just like postpartum's uncomfortable to recover from. I mean, like I had a constant pain. I went to several doctors. They had me, catalog my diet and put me into like a paradigm. Okay, it's probably your gallbladder because pregnancy is stressful on digestion. Well, 5 months postpartum with my firstborn, I have emergency surgery. I have an emergency appendectomy and it had gone gangrenous and was on the verge of rupturing.
Oh my Lord
And
above.
so I remember saying goodbye to my husband and 5-month-old baby, just praying to wake up. And I wake up and, I'm in the post op and um, the surgeon literally says to me, it's so gross to me because it felt like an upsell, but he's like showing me pictures of this is what it looked like. This is why we had to take it out. And then he's like, you're going to have your gallbladder out in 3 to 6 months. And I was 23 at the time.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, no. I am not going to need a second surgery. And really went home and started researching, how do I heal my body from the inside out? And found Sally Fallon's, Nourishing Traditions and the importance of
Yeah.
bone broth. Bone broth is a cornerstone of Chinese medicine, nourishing the qi, the life force. Like, you start to see this thing spans cultures and centuries, and it is missing.
Amen. There is not an indigenous culture on this planet that doesn't have bone broth as just essential
Yes.
to what they're having. The animal is different, whether it's like the
Yeah.
buffalo or whether it's a fish or whether it's a guinea pig or a goat. Like
Yeah.
the animal is different depending on where they are, but the broth made from bones is universal.
And it's the original superfood, right? And fast food. So I think that's the other thing, is like having something that's quick nourishment, a pot that's always simmering in the back, especially if you think about these, hunter-gatherer cultures, not like totally sure where the next meal is coming from, but
Mhm.
you have this way to be nourished. They also found, like, in the earliest caves that they have, they were preserving bones with the bone marrow, kind of like their own soup larder, to make, like, put the soup bones with the bone marrow
Amazing.
in them in the next pot. And so
Mhm.
you see it just absolutely essential to vital nourishment. So I went on a 5-week bone broth diet, and no, I didn't drink bone broth the whole time, but I did for the first week and a half. And then I started pureeing
Exclusively, you just only
vegetables.
had
hmm
broth for a week and a half. Okay.
You have to remember, I'm recovering from surgery.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and I'm recovering from an appendectomy, and just so I don't, this isn't a recommendation, I'm just chronicling. So I went on a week and a half bone broth diet. Then I start pureeing bone, like in the bone broth, veggies, okay, and putting a little bit of sauerkraut juice in it. And by the end of the 5 weeks, I'm having stews and like salads, and I feel like I've completely rebuilt my digestion from the inside out, okay, just in this 5-week period, where now I'm eating raw things, and and I feel better than I felt in my entire life. And so I start telling people, like, I have an ache and pain, or I can't, drink bone broth, drink bone broth, drink bone broth. And what I heard consistently is like, how would I even get the bones for that? Like, how would I make that? If I got people to make it, they would be like, it didn't even taste good. So I really
That's
realized
a
there was like,
common problem.
yes, and it does exist still today, although there are more options, but making it taste good is hard. And so one of the things that with my ratatouille side, I didn't realize other people weren't doing this, but I was like kind of biohacking these broths, right? It's like the perfect palette for whatever I want to put in there. It's a blank
Mhm.
flavor palette, really. And so I'm going to put turmeric and cracked pepper and boost the effectiveness of that curcumin 2000%, and put a little ghee in there and make it into a bone broth latte. And so I really started creating these flavors to do these different things, and really enjoyed that process. And then I saw where those could fit, in my cooking, where some of them went in like dishes with mushroom and heavy cream and beef, and then other ones went in like dishes with pork and marinara. And so it was really beautiful to see how they could be a culinary companion and such a nutrient dense like supplement that had been
Mhm.
missing from my diet. And so I decided to bring broth to the people in 2015, the new Braunfels Farmers Market. I think it was 100 degrees. It might have been like 98. It was in the summer. And I brought like those coffee canisters that you pump full of broth to the farmer's market to give people broth by the cup. And my husband was like, is she going to be crying when I pick her up? Is she going to be like totally in tears? Like, he had no idea. And to this day, 10 years later, his favorite memory, he came back and I had this huge smile on my face and a sign that said sold out. And
Aw.
I mean, that
And
Caitlin and I
also
have both worked at
150
farmers
degrees.
markets in our lives and done the same. Yeah.
But I mean, that speaks so much to the quality of the product, because
It
who's
does.
showing up at the farmer's market saying, I want a glass of hot broth?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
listener,
that
you
moment
have
was hard.
not had broth if you haven't had fond. It is unbelievable. Like the flavor is so good. It's really, really good. You do not feel like you're drinking a hot cup of bone water. There's nothing
Yeah.
impoverished about these flavors. It is so rich. And I haven't had one that I don't like. I would say the cayenne pepper one is a little high on the Scoville units for my palate, but I'm a weenie. It's the flavor's still good, but I'm like my nose is running and I'm like my ears are popping as I'm drinking it. But there's it's really delicious. Exceptionally delicious.
Well, thank you. Yes, and we like to do that one. Sophia, you should do that with bone, like a bone broth hot chocolate. That makes that a little more palatable. We like doing it with that flavor.
Okay. I could maybe try that.
I'm the spice queen on this one.
I love
I have
it.
no
She
problem with
is.
that broth.
I do drink it, but when I do, I'm like, whoo! It's just I mean, and it's not that it isn't good. It's just that I'm a weenie. But Caitlin is like, they don't
That's so
make food
funny.
hot enough for Caitlin. She's a beast.
They don't.
And she eats
Never.
like
Like once
roasted
in my life was I
hot
like,
peppers.
oh, I just love it all.
Her whole family is like this. It's a very bizarre phenomenon. They all look very Dutch, like the spiciest thing they'll ever have is like a boiled potato or something. But then you
Oh my
go out
gosh.
to eat with them and they're like, you're at like a curry place and they're like, bring it on, baby. And I'm like getting a
Your girl
contact
grew up in
sizzle just
Miami.
being near to them. Seriously,
I
but
mean, I was
all
in
all
Southern
your
Florida.
cousins are like this too. I've been like sick at your relative's house because I'm like, oh, I'll eat this salsa. And they're like, it's triple roasted ghost pepper salsa. And then I'm like in the bathroom for 2 days after it because it's like so hot. You guys are beasts. Anyway, moving on.
Okay,
I've
Alysa,
obviously been alone too long and haven't talked to other adult women. And so I'm just blabbering like an idiot.
Alysa, I see, like, I'm almost envisioning your stories like peaks and valleys, peaks and valleys. So, somebody who may not even understand, like, the brand hasn't been exposed to it yet. Before we go into like the valley in between, because there's always that in business and mom
Yeah.
life, and like, if somebody were to look at your business right now and they missed the in between story, like, what is Fond today? Where can people buy it? What
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about what went in between coffee pump canisters, broth by the cup at a farmer's market in Texas, and you having enough money in your marketing budget to pay us to gush over you, which we would do anyway.
Which we
Yeah.
were
So
doing
I
anyway.
often say,
Hmm.
I
We
know, I
maybe
saw
shouldn't
it.
say that. You could have
Um,
gotten this for free. No, no.
I often say the entrepreneurial journey for me was like, I knew I was going to do this. It really felt like a calling, and I was going to do it no matter what and no matter how. And the only two things I wasn't going to compromise on were the flavor and the quality, because I really felt, if I look at brands that I've respected, where that starts to shift is when they clearly are choosing profits over product. And I believed that consumers would pay extra to have something made without compromise. And so I often say it was like I walked as far as I could, and then I got to a wall, and then I found a shovel and I dug under the wall, and then on the other side of the wall I got to a lake with a rowboat, and then I rowed across I mean, it's just like I've just had to keep going. And that's one of the things that, when we had two warehouses burned down in 2022, and it was an extinction level event, like we had no idea if we'd be able to continue. And I had friends call me and just who are in the industry, like, why didn't you stop? Like, why didn't you just say, wow, we really tried this, but darn it, this happened. And, you know, it's a great question. I think it's because I wasn't done and my team wasn't done. And I think the
Mhm.
other thing that's so interesting is I am not building this alone. I have an incredible, it's a very small, but I have an incredibly smart, talented, and committed team with whom I could not do this. I mean, I could not do this without them. And they were also like, no, let's keep going. And they are defending and protecting that this product, this quality without compromise, deserves a place on shelf. And it, to me, it was almost like a signal to the industry, like, you're not doing enough. Just making food that's okay and has a massive product and that's actually poisoning people is not going to cut it. And who would know, like 10 years later, you know, we're in this place of Maha and finally Red 40 is being banned and people are understanding the root cause of chronic disease and is what we eat, right? It's toxic food. And the lack of nutrients and how massive agricultural farming has totally robbed our food of its nutrients. You know, you're looking at the level of vitamin C in 9 oranges today as compared to like 1 in the 50s or 60s. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, carrots, I think, have lost like 47% of their nutrients in the last, you know, 15 years. And really the only answer to that is to completely opt out of the system, support regenerative agriculture, which is the only way of farming that returns nutrients to the
Nutrients.
soil.
Mhm.
And so Fond has been regenerative since day one. And we were trying to educate HEB, which is like a major
Mhm.
retailer in Texas, in 2017. We were like, regenerative farming is the future. We did this whole video about the importance of the soil. And they were like, cool, yeah. You know, I mean, but it's like no one could hear it yet. And
Mm-hmm.
so to be still sourcing regeneratively now, to have meetings with buyers at Sprouts and HEB and Whole Foods, and they're like, this is amazing. Like, you're ahead of the curve. Regenerative is the next big thing. And we're like, that's cool. Like, we're so glad. But it's actually our commitment to our customers and the quality and the ardent belief, because I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it in our customers' lives, of the transformative power of nutrient dense food. Like, that's what's driving us. It's never been a trend. You know, we had to survive the plant-based everything trend. And people are like, bone broth? Why are you even making that? And we're like, yeah, you know, wait another 5 years.
Yeah. And now here you are.
So, but I think, you know, if people were to look at us today, I'm happy to say, like, people have definitely consistently, they mentioned the quality, consistently they mentioned the sourcing and the flavor. And so the three
Mhm.
things that I was like, you know, taste and quality, which to me part of that is the sourcing. Um it's great that we've been able to continue with that I have a team around me that's also committed to that, and that we're still in business and we're able to survive the fire. So,
Mhm. And what a time this
Yeah,
has
survive the
been.
fire. I literally have a fire burning in my city right now, and my phone is blowing up. Everybody's like, are the ashes landing? Like, I just opened the door and the ashes came blowing in, and like, I'm getting these like
mm.
alerts on my phone that it's very apt timing. I'm close to the beach, and so I don't, there's no burnable land here. Like, there's a huge 12-lane freeway in between me and where this fire is, and there would be no way for it to jump, really. And then we're also packed together. Nobody has like land that could burn. But
Yeah.
it's amazing hearing you, or just, I don't know, bizarre. My mind is getting a little warped here about like hearing about this burning down in a fire as my neighbors are messaging me and being like, how's everybody doing? What are we doing? Are we staying? Are we going? What do
hmm
you want to do?
I mean, it's massively destructive. I think that's one thing that you don't realize is, and that's not the end of it, but it's massively, it's destructive also on an emotional level, like that level of devastation and just loss. Like it's actually pretty hard for us to calculate it's just gone. That was really hard for us. Like even looking back at photos and you're like, wow, it's just gone. And there's like no going back. And it's really finding a way forward. And we had, Sprouts, specifically the buyer at Sprouts, I'll never forget when I'm like pleading with him, like, hey, we had a fire, like we're not going to be on shelf for like 6 months, please don't take us off, like we've spent so much money to try to get on shelf. And he was like, you guys are going to be like a phoenix, you're going to, I mean, and
Your
just
rise from the
that.
ashes.
Yes, and
Yes.
that beautiful. So that's an instance of someone speaking life right in a situation. And so that's been very, and I mean, but yeah, people, I don't, unless you experience it, we didn't, certainly me, I had not realized like, oh, a fire. It's like, no, it's next level for sure.
Yeah. It's not just like part of the building burned. It's like you're gutted.
Well, I
Yeah.
also think about kind of trends that you're pushing up against and people feeling the pinch on their grocery budget. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you
Totally.
know, I have this pinch. How do I choose where to spend the extra dollars? Like, where can it multiply for the health of my family or for my health in my body?
That's
And
something I
Yeah.
love so much about fond is this is something that you truly functionally could make in your own house. Like when someone's coming at you with like Shilajit and um these like
weird,
wild
yeah,
and crazy herbal tinctures and things like that you just and are saying like this is the key and it's completely inaccessible to you unless you go
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
me. Like this is not, anyone could make this, but
Hmm.
mhm. Well, they
you
make it as
can get
well.
it if you don't want to make it or you can't make it
Yeah.
because you're busy, you're whatever.
Yeah.
Here is something you can do. Like there's nothing gate kept here. It's not like I have the key and you have to go through me. Like this is something you could really make in your own kitchen if you wanted to.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
who's able to source regenerative bones every time they wanna do it? You know, there's
There, yeah.
pieces along the
Yeah.
process that differentiate y'all, if we're talking Texas language, even down to the packaging. I mean, you've
Hmm.
made very intentional choices in your business that I'm sure have undercut the bottom line. Hey, friends, we're taking a break from this episode so I can share with you a little more about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell's a reproductive health company offering superior nutritional supplements that are made without compromise to support women and men throughout their reproductive journey. I have taken Fullwell's prenatals, their fish oil, and have literally tried every product they've released, and I stand behind this recommendation with my whole heart. One of my favorite things to recommend to clients is their fertility trio. This includes their egg and sperm quality supplement, their women's prenatal, and fish oil. This helps proactively support you getting ready to conceive. This trio includes things like CoQ10, ashwagandha, and NAC. It makes me think of a life vest. You don't want to go into pregnancy without these foundational supports. And if you've been struggling while trying to conceive, this is the time to upgrade your prenatal fertility game and check out Fullwell. Use code FFF20 today to get 20% off your first order.
100%. A glass jar, please. It does not fit and ship like a plastic box at all. And
Yeah.
there's a lot
And
of brands that maybe make really good broth, but they put it in a plastic box because it fits and ships more economically.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, you highlighted earlier, like bone broth sounded kind of gross to people. And so my challenge as a creative, which is where you see the culinary side, was also how do we make broth beautiful? How do we show what it really is? And that was why I wanted to be so intentional with the packaging
Oh,
that
yeah.
women would see it and like want it just as good as it would do for them. They would also like desire it. And so that's I love that. I feel like we've been able to accomplish that where the
You
jars look
really
really
have. The jars
beautiful.
are
They
like
feel,
art.
thank you. Yes, it's a lot of intentionality for sure. And I think, I mean, y'all, no one understands the grocery budget like
More than a
me. I
mom
mean,
of
the
6
6,
boys.
it is so real. And
This is
So
just a
true.
trough at that
and
point. Like, what do you?
I know. Well, and what's crazy is like they're getting older, right? So like the 12-year-old and
And
the
bigger.
10-year-old are like eating as much as an adult versus like I'm sure someday they're going to eat twice as much as us when they get in their teens. So it's something we've had to be very intentional about. And another thing that people don't realize is like we buy fond. So one of the things we said with our investors is we want to buy the product. We don't want to get it for free. And so as like an employee, I get a 12 pack a month, but everything else I buy. I buy it from the store or I buy it on the website. And I do that intentionally because I want to experience what it's like. Like, does this fit in this meal or not? Right. And I think it's important that I stay like grounded in reality of like what it's like to buy the product and cook with it and put it in my budget. And so we do ancestral chili all the time. We do bone broth marinara. The chili has bone broth in it. I didn't say that, but that was implied. We put bone broth in our rice. It's one of the best ways to get it into the whole family and
Yeah,
also
rice,
help
quinoa,
balance blood
oats,
sugar.
even.
Yes.
Noodles when you're
Yes.
boiling
So
noodles. That's a good one.
yep. We do, we soak beans in it. We will do it in our spaghetti sauce. And those are just a couple of the meals. We'll also put it in our wing sauce, right? I mean, there's really nothing. It's kind of become like butter or salt in our kitchen. Like we just use it in everything. I think what's been really interesting too is with the tallow yesterday, my fifth son and I, which is always an adventure baking with children, but we made tallow, like chocolate cherry cupcakes made with tallow. And then we made the frosting. We did 1 parts butter to 1 parts tallow and made like a buttercream. And I had them eat it because I was like,
Is it
do
good?
you guys like this? Is it good? And they loved it. And I think what's really interesting about that is like, even in the past, I might have used a coconut oil. Like I'm not going to use canola oil, but I might have used something else. And even seeing how the plain tallow worked so beautifully in that, and it's so nice and moist, and yeah, the buttercream was like so silky, and it was just really great. So it's been fun to play with the tallow more in also like the sweet arena, because fond is obviously the bone broth line is very savory and is excellent. Also, I didn't mention like soups, but also sauces like beef bourguignon, coq au vin. Like we're doing a lot of. We use it in our potato soup, our broccoli cheddar soup. Like there's really nothing we're not using it in. We'll use it in ground beef. And the reason we do it is for flavor, but also nutrient density. And so as you are dealing with, okay, even if we're raising things regeneratively, we have to be honest that we're rebuilding the soil. And so things are probably not as nutrient dense today as they were in the 50s and 60s. And so we still need to make up a little bit of ground. I love getting extra protein in there through adding a jar of fond, the amino acid profile. One of the things that we love about bone broth is it has the 3 precursors to the master antioxidant glutathione. So glycine, proline, glutamine. Glycine also, if you have kiddos that are dealing with anxiety or can struggle sometimes with calming down, glycine is the precursor to GABA, which is kind of the natural tranquilizer in the body. And so one of the things that I would love to say it's my parenting, but like just going to be real honest, like when people are like, your boys are not crazy. I'm like, yeah, they don't eat a diet that is attacking their brain. Right. And I think that's the other thing people don't realize is food allergies often show up first neurologically. So you may drink a glass of milk and you don't have a rash or you're not throwing up, but you should pay attention if you're feeling a little more agitated. Or a lot of people will have a latte and think it's the caffeine. It's actually the milk that's turning into casomorphine in the blood and messing neurologically. It might not. You might be able to tolerate it fine. But, gluten has been so highly processed that many people cannot I mean, only the like most stalwart digestive systems can really process it. And so something like an einkorn, which is a more heritage grain. I have a lot of friends. I'm not here yet because I'm not as much of a baker, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But I have friends that get the wheat berries and like process it right away and use it. And they're doing like a heritage wheat berry that's not been as genetically modified. And I think that's also another great way to get more nutrients into the diet. But I think when it comes to children, so often we sort of blame them for behaviors that we also need to pay attention to the inputs. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying like, I'm not advocating for like what's it called? Like a kinderarchy where like the children rule the home. I'm just saying like, let's be mindful
Yeah,
of like,
totally.
Yes,
if
like if your
your
kid is
child,
melting down when you're turning off the show, they probably shouldn't have been watching the show. Like
Yeah,
they
or
needed you to not put them in front of a screen.
yeah, it's I totally understand that from 1,000 different points of view. It's like my kid was really acting out the other day towards the evening, and my husband looked at me and he's like, "This isn't our kid." And I was like, "Yeah, well, mom's been on a food photography retreat for 4 days. He hasn't seen his mom.
mm,
Like he's just acting out because he doesn't know how to get the love and
mm,
attention
Just
and like
feels
soul
weird. He just
nourishment he
doesn't
needs." Yeah, and
feel
he
like
doesn't know
himself.
why.
yeah,
Hmm.
Right.
yeah,
But like we bring snacks to my daughter's preschool and it's like so and so can't eat this red dye because it makes their ADHD go wild and so can't la la la. And I'm like, why can't we just bring like fruit and
yes,
cheese? Or, like why are we
yes,
buying these
yes,
things that we don't even know what's in and saying to a preschool classroom, eat this and feel good, right? Like,
yeah,
and so listener, if you're hearing this, you're just a grown-up little preschooler and your body is
yeah,
saying, you want me to ovulate, you want me to build you a
Get pregnant,
well-nourished
stay
baby in
pregnant.
pregnancy. Yeah, like let's slow down and think about the building blocks here. And
mm,
just what if we poured a little bit more into your food budget? What if we poured
mm,
a little bit more into that cup of soup? Or like I made a rice pilaf the other day, and like when I even just cooked the noodly part of the rice pilaf, instead of boiling it in water, I boiled it in fond. And like I know that I'm handing my children a more nourishing
mm,
side to their steak when I give them something that's cooked that way. Like I want you to think about that, not about what we're taking away or being so afraid of buying the conventionally processed grapes because you couldn't afford the other one. I want you to focus
Or
on
they
the
just didn't have them.
intentionality of, yeah, of what you can do. And one step beyond that, like I think something Elisa's really alluding to or just kind of spoken and I'm at least gathering is, making decisions and being intentional even about the words that you use. Think about if that mealtime you're intentionally kind to your body and
mm,
for a lot of my Christian clients, I'm like, I want you to actually remember that Jesus Christ
mm,
hung on a cross and spilled his blood out for your healing and redemption. And
mm,
so in those moments, and he says, every as oft as you eat or drink, remember this. Like, are we actually doing that? Can you spend those few moments while you're nourishing yourself really thinking about that? And like I spend time when I do my stretching and yoga and I think about the blood flow to my ovaries and I envision ovaries that aren't polycystic because that's what I struggle with. And I think that there is a beautiful mind body connection. I know
mhm,
this. I know we have this mind body connection that we largely in this westernized world are completely, I don't want to say unaware of, but not seeing the beauty of, and that you really can do a lot more. And instead of feeling afraid or what about all this or that, I just want you to think about this episode and nudging you towards more nourishment in this way. And there is no bone broth I've ever purchased that when you hold the bottle and go jiggle, jaggle, jiggle, that the gelatin on top does the wiggle waggle that you want and you get when you make your own bone broth. And I'm
Mm,
just so proud to feed it to my family.
mm. Something that you said that I really resonate with is like, I have a couple of moms that have just told me I could never be like you. Like you do so much, and it's like I started with one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can start anywhere, I would say make your rice and your grains with bone broth, right? If you don't think that you can um drink it or the kids will
Yeah,
like
drink
it
it
or
instead of
it's too,
coffee in the
it's
morning or grind your own
yeah. Yeah.
einkorn flour.
Yeah. I mean,
Finkel and
I
einkorn.
don't do everything
Einkorn
either,
and
y'all.
Finkel. Who knows that movie quote?
And I think I don't.
Only you.
It's Ace
Only
Ventura.
you. And
It's
2
Finkel and
audience members.
Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is a man. And then he goes and melts down in the shower. Okay. Very transphobic. I'm sorry, everyone. Let's move forward.
So, but I think, you do not have to do everything all at once. And yes, like I try to buy my clothes in a way that's also helping the regenerative system. That was 7 years into this journey, right? I mean,
When did you
now
start
we're
this? How
really
old are you? What is this? This I feel like this.
You don't have to answer any of those questions.
so funny.
But if you're
Uh,
watching this on
I'm just
YouTube,
like
you
looking
too
at
can
your
look like
beautiful
Alysa
young
if you
face, and
drink
I'm
bone
like,
broth.
what? I'm like a raccoon in the
so
garage right
funny.
now. Why am I on this episode? I'm having a lot of explosive thoughts.
Oh no.
Just edit me out of
But
this. I'm not
sorry.
doing
The other
well.
No, we
It's
love
such
that
a
you're
good
here,
suggestion.
Sophia.
It's such a good suggestion though, like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And if that's it, and you can't build 40 new habits at once. Like go try.
No.
You've done that
No.
actually and it never worked.
No.
So
For sure.
No.
start
And
with the shift.
and the most important thing that I tell people, in fact, I tell them the secret ingredient in every recipe that I have, while you want me to say fond and like that's the second, is always prayer. And I just take
I
a
love
moment and
that.
I just acknowledge, like, because sometimes I don't feel like making food after a day of working. Sometimes I'm like really tired and I'm a little underfed. And so I'm nauseous. So I don't want to eat. And it's like just taking that moment where it's like, okay, thank you for the opportunity to nourish my family. It's reframing, right? Thank you for the food that we have instead of like, oh, it's so expensive, right? Thank you that we're able to buy what we were able to buy. And so truly, if you just feel so restricted, I think even gratitude, like if you don't subscribe to the Christian worldview, gratitude like clinically has proven to have such a significant impact on the body that just starting with that, like
Yeah, creates
being
new neural pathways.
being
Crazy.
grateful for the opportunity to nourish your family, being grateful for the food you were able to buy, and being grateful that it will nourish your body as you eat it.
Mhm.
And that's a great place to just start with, because there can be a lot of anxiety and feelings of unsuccess, right? Like, oh, I
Mhm.
failed. I
Mhm.
don't even know if it's going to taste good. We're just going to go
And
get
downright
Chick-fil-A.
fear when you're
Mhm.
like,
And
wow, this is conventionally farmed grapes and they're on the dirty dozen. And just fear that instead of like accepting the nourishment that these grapes do have for you, which is significant,
yeah,
even when there's also pesticides.
yeah. And the body is really amazing at getting rid of toxins. And you need to believe that too.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right?
Oh, literally.
Like
Can
it's so important. Go ahead.
I speak to that just a little bit?
Yes.
My dad started chemotherapy this week and radiation for an esophageal cancer. It's limited his ability to swallow. So Fond has been, but he and I were talking the other night and he said, just going into and sitting in this infusion room for 5 hours, he's like, me just being there changed the entire place and this and that. And I looked at him and I was like, Dad, the Holy Spirit inside of you, like talking about that chemo, we need it to go to the right cells. We need it to do this and that. And I was like, you're so much better off knowing that that's there too. And I
Mm.
can't even describe for you like as I'm saying this and kind of if I had like been a fly on the wall and listening to it, it really made me think of fertility patients. Is like there's a lot of things people wrestle with and why and how could this happen and why is it so hard and all these things. And it's like if we and honestly, I think some of those questions are good. It can clarify your faith and draw you
Mm-hmm.
nearer. Um, but I also just want to encourage you with that thought that like you do the best you can with the foods that you eat and the behaviors you can change and improve things. And don't forget that other piece that's so beautiful and so strong that that power was able to raise a man from the dead. So don't forget that piece too, because
Yeah.
it can be, it is a change maker. And um, I don't know. Also, just since we're talking about my dad's cancer, Alysa, I don't know if you know this, but like we talked about bringing Fond on and all these things. And this was before my dad had a procedure that the procedure turned out showing us that
Mm.
this thing that's blocking your swallowing isn't what we thought it was. It's just this huge ass tumor and nothing can get by it. The opening's like the size of maybe
A
at
coffee
that
straw.
point. Yeah, like the edge of a pencil, the eraser on it. So that was Thursday. Friday, my dad and I go to a CT scan, and he's still on a lot of medications. And this whole thing is like so new and bubbling up all the emotions, right? And my parents
Mm.
live with us in kind of like a unit attached to our house. And I take on you could use the word burden, but just a responsibility for things with them. And we come home, it's been snowy, and I like pull up to my front door from this like not even 24 hours since knowing he has cancer. We just left like a very intense thing. And we pull up and there's two huge Fond boxes.
Mm.
I burst into tears. I'm like, Dad, do
Mm.
you know what that is? Because it was like we thought, oh, these swallowing issues are about to be better after this procedure. And then it was like, nope, we got a long road ahead of us. And it was
Mm.
like pulling up to just like the thing that you prayed for and needed to help you nourish your dad. It was like magical, miracle. I don't know. It was like the
Mm.
timing of it could not have been, I'm tearing up a little bit telling you this story. Like it couldn't have been more amazing. And it was so touching to me to
Mm.
be just a part of your community and loved. And I don't know. It's like and a peace of mind that even while he hasn't been able to eat a lot lately, I know that he's getting food that is really nourishing him and helping
Mm.
him heal. And
Mm.
through these next 6 weeks of intense treatments, like I have a rotation of what we're feeding him, and Fond is like a cornerstone of that right
Mm. Well, it's a privilege to be part of that. And I'm just grateful to God that we can be a tangible mercy for y'all because that's the goal, right? And
now.
Tangible
it's,
mercy. What a way to put it. Beautiful.
I, you know, I really want, like, the goal in Fond is to really be that feed first, care first.
Mhm.
And to know me is to be cared for by me. And I don't think that can come from anywhere else but like a gift from God. Like I've had that since I can remember. Like to know me is to be cared for by me. And so Fond is like how I can do
An
that
extension of that in business
specifically
and
as many ways as possible. So that's a privilege. I'm so grateful that Fond can help with that.
it's so amazing. Alysa, tell people, I mean, obviously you're in our show notes. People can go there if you're like listening to this right now. But where can people find and purchase Fond in multiple capacities? And
Yeah.
is there anything else about the brand or the products that you just want to like take a minute and kind of highlight for everybody?
I think oftentimes people feel intimidated, like with the flavored tallows or the flavored broths, that they're going to pick the wrong one. and
Mm-hmm.
for the meal. And I just want to encourage you that like they play really nice with others. Like
Yeah.
it's not as scary as you might think. I know there's a lot of ingredients in there, but that's designed to make them pretty safe to play with then, right? We're around, maybe not for Sophia the spicy, but for everything else, like it should be pretty easy
Yeah, hey,
to
listen,
use.
even though I'm a weenie when it comes to spice, my most used tallow is the chili garlic. I use that quite
Oh,
a
Well, you
bit.
know
that
what's
one's
so
so good.
funny?
It's not too
Sophia
hot for
always
me.
has sinus issues, so it's
Oh,
actually the
please.
perfect broth for her when she's struggling because it'll neti
That's
pot
when
her
I
out.
drink that one. Dead serious, Caitlin. Dead serious. That's when I
I know.
do.
It's
For
an oral
I
real.
neti
know.
I've
pot.
oh, God, it's so gross. Don't put the broth in your nose. But
No.
yeah, truly, like that is when I reach for that one most, is when I'm like congested. Like I said, my nose
Yeah.
is running and my ears are popping as I'm drinking it, and it's because I reach for that one most when I'm all like congested. Freaking
Yeah.
sinus problems, dudes. If it's not one thing, it's another. What is my life? But here we are.
I know.
Okay,
I hear
so
you.
don't be
Yeah.
intimidated. I hear that.
Yeah.
What else
Yeah.
do you want us to know?
I think also like there's, in supporting Fond, they're not only, I want them to see us themselves as joining a larger community. We only support regenerative farmers here in the US. Even people who have bone broth that's regenerative on shelf, other people are getting it from New Zealand, from Uruguay. Like it can still be regenerative, but we really make a point
It's a
to
long way to
support
go to
here.
ask for a cup of broth, Uruguay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of suet comes from there too, which is what you render to make the tallow. And so
Mhm.
we just to encourage them, like you're supporting more than 40 regenerative farmers here in America. We also were intentional with our glass that it's manufactured here. And so just that they know like they're
Where's your
really
glass come from?
supporting
Ohio?
something that's larger. I wish it was from Ohio. It's from New York.
Oh,
So
my grandfather worked for Anchor Hocking in Ohio, glass manufacturer.
oh, yes,
So
Anchor
I'm just
Hocking's
excited
great.
when people.
Yes. Yeah. So, also, and then last thing, we talked about, hey, little habits, starting small. You do not have to drink a jar a day to get benefits. My goodness. Like you can drink 4 to 6 ounces. I do suggest that if you're new to bone broth, to see like the most impact, drink it first thing in the morning. Yes, you can have water, you can have your lemon water, get the lymphatic system going, but before your coffee. So really, bone broth has gelatin and collagen that help heal and seal the gut. And what happens is, the gut has these tight junctures that are close together that over time through stress or whatever, can get looser and more prone to toxins and food actually passing through that. Not only do you have a problem with nutrient absorption, but potential toxicity. And so healing and sealing the gut with gelatin first, and that collagen rich beverage first thing in the morning is so important. Really great for hair, teeth, skin, nails. We talked
Obviously,
about
if you're on YouTube,
so
obviously.
sweet. We also talked about like baby making, really important, can help you get that protein goal when you are pregnant, can
Mhm.
help a lot of women have meat aversions when they're
Mhm.
pregnant. I did bone broth was one of the only meat sources I could have in the beginning. And so just having that consistent bone broth, maybe if you can, puree a little bit of an egg in it. And so you've got like a little egg drop soup meeting your protein goals. The thing I love bone broth for, though, in this whole journey from conception to, growing a human and is the postpartum
I was just gonna
journey.
say, I could guess where
Oh
this is
yeah,
going.
Bone
healing,
broth has
especially if
been,
you've had a
yes,
surgical birth.
yes. And replenishing, studies have shown women can deal with nutrient deficiencies up to 10 years after a pregnancy. And I just don't think it needs to be that way. I have had several healthy pregnancies. And also, bone broth has been a very, again, tangible mercy to me. I have had 3 miscarriages, and
So sorry.
So
each one
sorry.
was, thank you. They were really hard. And sometimes in those experiences, you can actually feel the hormones shift over. At least for me, like it was almost like my body was being washed. It was like, oh, okay, we're done. Boom. It was very sudden with one of them. And like all I could do was like lay in the fetal position and sip one of our flavors that dealt with inflammation. And so, it's been sweet for me to have it and to be able to experience it. Yes, in the high points, also in the recovery seasons, but also like you were illustrating earlier, like the valleys, that is life. And the fact that bone broth can meet you in all of those, I think is and has been meeting people
For
right
millennia,
for
really.
yeah, and in that. And so we make it easy and delicious for it to now be a part of your life.
It's amazing.
Sophia here, interrupting this episode to talk about fond bone broth, tallow, and lard. So, fond bone broth has long since been a staple in my home kitchen. I use this all the time. You will always find it in my kitchen. And do you know what? I even make my own bone broth. That's how much I love fond is I pay money for something that I also regularly make for myself. It is beyond delicious. The flavors that they have in these broth, it's so deep and complex. It's not like a can of Swanson's. It's not just like the chicken and stars type flavor, though that can be delicious at times. This is such a complexity of flavor. It's almost like a beverage, and I'm not exaggerating. Plus, you can use it in cooking, everything from vegetables, starches, grains. Very, very easy way to get more collagen, protein, and minerals into your life by simply cooking with broth. It is truly delicious, and it will take any dish you use to cook with it, from just a normal dish on the table to truly gourmet. So head on over to fondbonebroth.com and use code FFF10 for 10% off your first time order. Bye.
I don't want to follow up that with this, but I have to tell you, as I got into nourishing traditions and got familiar with kind of like ancestral eating and learning these things, I was like, I'm going to make the best bone broth ever. And I know chicken feet make it this and that. And so, like, I got married, I had this stock pot going on my stove. I went and bought all these incredible bones. And I went to the one store in Dayton, Ohio that had little chicken feet that I could buy. And I bought like a pound of them, having no idea what I was getting. And then I put them all in and, cooking it. And I take the top of the pot off and there's all just these little like
Contracture.
the most.
Because like the tendons in them like shrink up because all the collagen's going into the broth. So it's like
Somebody right now is so relating to me in that they're like,
Yes.
I could make it, but then I probably wouldn't drink it. Like this happened to me with kombucha too. I made my own kombucha, then I got pregnant and touched a SCOBY, and I was like, and I'm making kombucha for other people, and I'll buy kombucha for me. It was just like this mental thing, right?
Yes.
And so for the person that's listening to this and they're not a ratatouille and they're not very culinary and
Yeah.
like you want like one powerhouse way. You're going to the grocery store this weekend. You want one powerhouse way to like change things. This is one of those. Like there aren't very many things that you can be like, do this one change and it will drastically improve your nutrition. Fond bone broth is one of those things.
Amen.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes, it is. It's incredible. So it's amazing that we can say that. I'm so grateful for bone broth. I'm like, I need it.
Mhm.
Especially
And their
recovering
tallow
from Lyme,
too.
especially having so
Mhm.
many.
It is a
Yeah,
great,
yeah, and the
great
tallow's fine.
addition to your kitchen when you're like butter or olive oil or butter. What are we going to put in this? Because I can't use the canola oil. I can't use my spray Pam. Then these are the two things my mom, so many of us, it's like the only way we learned to cook was Teflon and Pam. And that's how we
Yeah.
cook. And
Mhm.
if you're baking,
I
it's
can't
know.
believe
canola
it's
oil.
not
And that's
butter.
what we do. And I can't believe it's not butter. Yeah. A few
Oh my
squirts of
gosh.
that.
Let's
Yes.
segue into Yeah Girls because I have my Yeah Girl. Alysa, if
Oh,
you
I
haven't
want to hear
listened
it.
before,
Do
this
it.
is
Do
a
it.
segment we celebrate. So it's like, what could somebody say Yeah Girl to you? Could be like so big or like this is big to me. But my Yeah Girl is that, which was also just like a shocking answer to prayer. And my siblings were like, why are you even still doing this? But I put myself into this really bougie, fun food photography retreat last year so that I could start taking pictures of my own recipes I develop, and had been paying somebody to do it, which I loved. And she was incredible. No complaints, but it was very expensive. And I was like, I'm making the food. I feel like I should be able to do this. It's a lot harder than you think. But I went to this retreat and it was awesome. And I can't really understate how life-changing it was for me to make connections with two people at the retreat that I've prioritized over the last year. We get on the phone once a week and I kind of like business coach them, and they photograph coach me. Like, they help me with editing, they help me with different things. Well, we did like our own self-made retreat this weekend, and I couldn't gush over it anymore. We went to a truly like farm to table fine dining restaurant where we were on their goat farm. They have a blackberry bramble and a goat farm, and they make their own cheese. And like, you literally are dining at a place that has the same love and passion for providing good food as I see shining through you, Alysa. And that was so fun. So we did restaurant photography. But one of the things we did is I cooked for them all the meals that we were at home. And one of the meals, because I am from Southern Florida, I grew up eating a lot of Cuban food. And we eat Cuban food a couple times a month. And I make this incredible black bean soup, use the fawn bone broth in it, make like a pork situation. I did chicken this time. But when I made the fried plantains that go with it, I use the fond unflavored tallow and blew their minds. And the kitchen didn't smell afterwards. Like, when you fry things, it can get stinky because you're like oxidizing and all the smoke. And because this is the thing about cooking with different things, like the smoke point and the flavor. Like, I don't want to fry something in coconut oil because I don't want everything to taste like coconut. Like, I don't want
Coconut, you
that.
don't always want that. Yeah.
You don't. So we did the most. And so as I'm cooking and doing all this like culinary magic, because I'm Ratatouille, they're taking like these incredible, beautiful photos of fond that are going to be my gift to you. I'm going to edit them for you, of the tallow, and just as a thank you for your kindness. But like, I think a lot of times you listeners are like, do you guys really like that fertility tracking monitor? And I don't know if you know this about Sophia, but we turn down like 40 companies for every yes we say to. It's like, we turn down so much because we only promote things we absolutely believe in and use ourselves or recommend to our clients. And that was just a really fun moment of also like fun business adventure and pouring into myself creatively, and sweet women friendships, which I have found to be this joy in this part of my life, and good food. I mean, it was just kind of like all the things, and fond was a part of it. So you're in my kitchen all the time now. We're best friends, and you didn't even know it.
Thank you.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah, girl. Do you have a yeah,
All right,
girl,
Sophia.
Elisa? Or is it my turn? Oh, what's my
I
yeah,
say you
girl?
go.
My
Give
yeah,
her another
girl is
example.
maybe a little sad, but I feel like it's a yeah, girl. Is we are going to the surgeon right after this. Me and my husband are going there, and she has the pathology results for my ectopic pregnancy. Is going to tell us if we were having a boy or a girl. So we'll get to know what the sex of that baby was. And I am really looking forward to that. And I plan fully to name this baby because I really have some names that I want to want to use, and I don't know how many more kids I'm going to get to have. And so I'm looking forward to that. I know this might sound like freaking grim, but to me this is exciting, and I'm excited to learn about this, and I'm excited to see sort of what is the state of things. I'm going to have this doctor draw some blood. I've been avoiding taking iron supplements because there's like a whole bunch of things after you have a blood transfusion. It's not like regular blood. Like there's a lot of like preservatives and stabilizers and anticoagulants, and like there's things in this, it's a blood product that they're giving you that make it to where you can't do all these things that you would usually do. And so I'm excited to get tested and to see my hemoglobin, hematocrit, ferritin, like look at all these things and to see where I'm at so I can start making nutritional choices accordingly. And I will announce this here. This has all inspired me to write a little ebook about nutrition for blood loss,
Mm,
whether that's you have heavy periods, whether that's you have fibroids, whether that's you've had an ectopic like
So
me,
needed.
you've had a pregnancy loss where you're
mm,
losing more blood than is uh, natural, normal, healthy. I'm writing a little ebook about that. And it's in its rough draft stages right now, where I'm just sort of putting things together of what I want to say. But when that's all drafted
mm,
up, I will have that available to you, listener, and to everyone on fertility focused nutrition for blood loss.
Love
mm.
that.
Yeah, girl.
Yeah, girl.
It's so
Thank you.
important. It's so important. I know the gender of one of my miscarriages, but I don't of the other two. And so it can be really healing to know that. And
Did you
just
name your
so
babies?
it's not yes, I did.
You did.
Yeah.
See, this is what I'm hearing. My
Yeah.
husband thinks that if I do that, I'm like getting to be creepy. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's like, "Look, this
Um
baby was ectopic. It could never have been. It was never had a chance. Like never even had a body, like let alone a brain and like a consciousness
mhm.
and like a just never even was anything." And I appreciate that, but I still believe that this
Mhm.
was a human baby created in God's image, and I still want to name this baby. I just really want to.
And it,
Yeah.
He's afraid I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna like
and so you
build some
should.
sort of emotional altar to this child, but I don't think I'm at risk of doing that. And I have good people in my life to tell me when I'm getting weird. So I
Yeah,
hope
I think
everything's
what's interesting is acknowledging things actually is a way to process them
Mhm.
and to heal through them versus um, shutting them down. And, my first miscarriage was not acknowledged by my husband. He's like such an amazing, he's like literally my 6'1" Xanax. So I say this with like a,
Yeah, he's
but
wonderful, but
we
didn't.
did not,
Mhm.
he did not understand this for me and did not validate it. And so
Mhm.
I actually pretty recently was in a therapy session bawling about my first miscarriage because it was so significant and had not been acknowledged. So just want to girl you on the
Thank you.
acknowledging and listening to your gut and naming this child and making peace with the fact that your husband may not get it, and that's okay.
And
Mhm.
he,
You
It's
I
so
know?
mean,
true.
has a skewed view. He's a warrior, war fighter. So like
Yes.
his
Yes.
thoughts on death and life and everything like that is just not the same as me in like a nurturing mothering capacity. He's a hardened war fighter. And
Mhm.
so I don't need him to be that. I have Caitlin, I have my mom, I have other people. But yeah, you're right.
Yes.
I just want
Yes.
to thank you for validating that. Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pivia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So, if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, "I want to have a baby." And the doctor looks at you and says, "Good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant." And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
Yes.
Yeah, to get to a point too where like this one friendship or this one person or this spouse doesn't have to be everything for you.
Mhm.
Like that's
Oh, it is
actually really
wonderful.
beautiful to get to the point where you're like, uh,
Yeah.
I realize you can't do this for me, but I can get this done. I have other people pouring into me in this way.
For real. And
Yeah.
that you don't have to be
Community
like,
and
yeah, your partner doesn't have to be your everything. There are things that I like to do that he is like not into, and that's okay. He doesn't think they're like dumb and worthless and like hate on me for doing it, but like, is his leisure time going to be spent in this specific way with me? If I'm pumped on it and inviting him, he'll be a good sport, but like, it's all
yeah.
right to have other friends that are like really into the thing with you and that your husband's just sort of like, "Hey,
Mhm.
good for you. I support it. I don't really want to spend my Saturday on that, but good for you."
Yeah. Okay, my turn.
Yes.
So my girl, this is gonna sound a little woo woo, but I've been in like my son is 15 months now, and so feels like there's a little bit of like we've arrived at a level where I don't feel so much cortisol all the time, right? Of just
Mhm.
running a
Mhm.
business, managing,
Mhm.
6 kids and the household and growing um the tallow line, which is as exciting as it is to grow. It's actually like the most expensive and risky part of a business, right? Because you can grow yourself out of it. It's just you've got to do it really well. And so
Yeah.
I'm in a situation where God is sort of bringing me back to a lot of things that I've experienced before and handled in a way that I would say was not super healthy for my body. Now, I'm not talking about like addiction or like I'm talking about shutting down emotions. Like I'm just going to turn on the
Mhm.
sergeant part of my brain and get through it. And what
Mhm.
that's done has led to a lot of trapped emotions and basically training my body to like freeze in situations. And so I'm really grateful for this time where I can sort of face some things again with new
Mhm.
courage to face what I'm feeling and to grow in resiliency. And it
Mhm.
sounds really simple, but it's like so hard sometimes to be like, man, I'm really angry. And it's uncomfortable to be angry and I don't like being angry, but I'm going to say why I'm angry and I'm going to process that and I'm going to move on. Right? And so I think that's the
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
delight that I've been experiencing is like validating my own emotions. Like so resonated when you said we're basically grown up toddlers. Like, what are you feeling? Do you need to eat? Are you tired? Do you need a snack? Like
Totally.
just being very so
Yeah.
I'm
And what do you
really
say to your toddler?
yeah.
You say, "It's okay to be angry. It's not
Yes.
okay to hit your sister," right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
you're
Yes.
teaching we're trying to teach that emotional intelligence, and let's find a way
Yes.
you can get it out because you and
Yes.
I probably weren't brought up that way.
Yes. And I think as a mom,
Yeah.
I don't want the kids to see me crying all the time. Right. And so you sort of like emotionally edit, or at least I have. I don't know if other moms resonate with that and just being strong or just being like, I actually don't have time to be like crying for 30 minutes. And so just that has been a practice that I've been doing is like feeling, processing, and intentionally. And what's been so beautiful about it is like with renewed courage and resilience. Like I thought facing these things would make me
Mhm.
weaker, but what it's actually doing is like
Mhm.
helping me to move past in situations where instead and being like, I don't want to feel that. I'm fine. It's all good. I was getting stuck. Right. So now being
Mhm.
able to move past has been really, really beautiful. And I'm grateful that I'm in a stage where I feel like I can do that and I can acknowledge some things and really process in a place that I'm glad I'm in a place where that feels safer and a little less like much stress all the time, just because a newborn is a lot
Mhm.
in addition to a
It's so
business
much.
and babies.
5 other
So.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
girl. I will girl
Yeah,
that
girl
all
to
day
that.
long.
Thank you.
Good message for us too.
Okay, I don't really feel like you ever answered this question though, and we better button it up before we button up the episode, is where can people get Fond?
Okay, so we are available nationwide at Sprouts. They're our only
Great.
nationwide retailer right now for the broth and actually the tallow. The tallow was on a 90-day test there. And we sold a month's worth in 7 days because our customers are
Woo!
amazing. So we know that, we know that some of the flavors will be nationwide there. And then we are expanding with Whole Foods. So we have a store locator on our website that's up to date. We are in premium mom and pop shops, love to be in those across the country. If you have a health food store you love, we're probably in it. And if we're not, we would love to be. And of course, you can always buy fondbonebroth.com.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, Alysa, thanks for your time. Thanks for your heart.
Thank you.
Thanks for being vulnerable and sharing some of the hard. I
Being
think that,
real.
that's it's always a gift that you allow other people to kind of learn and connect with you. And hopefully listeners, you see so much more than just a brand of something sitting on a shelf at a store right here. There's so much commitment to quality and nourishment. Sophia and I couldn't be more proud and privileged to be partnering with Fond. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies. It was a pleasure to be here.